All right, so the baking chips, you launched those, they're in retail. What was that process like
Mhm.
to first get through even the organization? So here's what we want to do. Then you start developing the concept. Then you bring it to market. Like, how long is that process typically? Like, how should a marketer go through that well, in your opinion?
Mhm. In my opinion, marketing needs to be involved at the very start, from concept to the go-to-market strategy, commercialization, because filtering any product through brand fit is one of the things that will make or break the success of that item when it gets to the shelf. So we talked a little bit about how I was over sales, marketing, and innovation. That was by design, to have those revenue functions really cohesive as one team because they have to work hand in hand. And so, as we look at the early stages of innovation and we've determined this is white space, we want to go chase it down. Now we have to start commercializing and we have to understand, how is the product going to get made? Who's going to make it for us if we're not making it ourselves? What are the packaging options and how do those fit with our brand identity and our brand standards? This is well even before the design of the package, the creative of the package. This is the
Mm-hmm.
substrate that you're going to use and so forth. And so one of the big hurdles that's going to be involved in there is price. What's the price elasticity of the baking category, and where is this product going to fall if it's positioned as something that's premium? Will a shopper be willing to trade up? Does the category merchant want their shopper to trade up? So, or is it in other cases, in a different situation, maybe it's a basket builder. So it's not a trade up, it's a plus one. So those are the things that the marketer is going to be thinking about in that early stage of commercialization. Once some of those hurdles are met, and a lot of items fall out of the funnel at that stage, just from a feasibility, right? What's the
Mm-hmm.
feasibility of our organization making this product and being able to do so at a profit? But once those hurdles are met, then the marketer is really going to think about biggest billboard. How does this look on shelf? And so, especially if you're jumping from one category where you might already be playing into another, right? We were jumping aisles, studying that set. And maybe you have a target retailer that you're going to launch with and you put a little energy behind that. But I recommend going and looking at every major retailer and even the regionals that you plan to grow with as an organization, and study what the aisle looks like. What are the must-haves from a structure standpoint, right? So let's say you're targeting Walmart, which was where we ultimately landed the oat milk baking chips for quite some time. If you're targeting Walmart, what does their case look like on the shelf? And what are the dimensions of the average case on on the shelf? And how does the bag lay? I mean, one of the earlier designs that we had before we took it to print, we were missing nomenclature across like the edge of the bag. So if you think about a baking chip and you go in the aisle, what do you see? You don't normally see the top of the bag, you see the edge of the bag. And that's where a lot of the call outs are going to be. And so we needed to beef up the font that was on that edge of the bag and make sure that we had the call outs there that were really grabbing the consumer's attention, facing where they were going to be looking at when they went into the shelf. So study the shelf to get that design because of course you know your brand standards, right? You know, I need my logo here and it's, but knowing how it's going to show up in a sea of other products is a critical stage.
You know what? I love that's a really good point on. I know, and I haven't actually heard this from a lot of people. Is this idea of retail specific design approach where you're looking at
Hmm.
your innovation and you're almost targeting a specific retailer. And I've seen it done with Costco before or Sam's Club, which is a club environment,
Sure.
but to really do it from, let's say, a Walmart or conventional grocery or whatever it might
Hmm.
be, and to say, hey, let's think about that from the very, very beginning of, say, Walmart
Hmm.
specifically, and just say,
Right.
we're going to just kill it for Walmart and it's going to be awesome.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
moving it back. So that's a really, that's a neat strategy. I like that.
Well, I think it's all in this mentality of being for your customer because your customer is the shopper that comes in the aisle and ultimately pulls the product off the shelf, right? That's the pull through. But there's also a push strategy when you're in
Oh,
CPG marketing, and that push is all the way from the distributor into then your category merchant and your retailer. So where the sweet spot happens, and I was thinking about like what's an analogy for all of this? Like I view sales as the tip of the sword, right? They create the opportunity or pierce through or penetrate the opportunity. But how sharp of an edge of a blade you have is really your brand and your marketing to determine how you're going to cut through all the noise. How are you going to cut through the hundreds of products coming across the category merchant's desk every single day? And then, if you do get through that point, how are you going to cut through the noise of these really big brand blocks at the shelf? And there's been a lot of consolidation in the grocery industry, and you've
Hmm.
seen that across the board. So there's some powerful brand blocks in every category across the store. If you're emerging, if you're new into that set, you've got to make your brand block that's probably only a few SKUs really, really work for you. And so, and there's all the other levers that you're going to pull once you do get the product there, right? But
Hmm.
that sharpness of your blade and your sword, that's going to be what cuts through the noise. And then I view the handle as the product and the innovation, right? That's the base and the strength and really where the grip comes from that creates what I would call both resilience and longevity, because it's great to get the entry point, whether you're a new brand or an existing brand getting new products into the store, but you have to have velocity of the product that is going to be on the shelf, and you have to have resilience within your branding to weather inevitably some disruptive category entrance or supply chain disruption or inflation, right? Some things that distribution, supply chain interruptions that can happen throughout the way. So um, that's the analogy I look at is as you're taking those products into the store, if you know your customer really well, you also likely know where they shop. And so if you're targeting your customer, you also are targeting a retailer. And I think where I see a lot of emerging brands do really well right now is when they are intentional about where they launch.
Yeah.
I can remember there being this old, like, you take your most successful product to club, right? You take a new pack of that to club and you start in Mulo or Natural, wherever. And I say, well, if your shopper is the Costco shopper or the Sam's Club shopper, design it for them, start to
Hmm.
finish, because everything, all of your logistics, all of your stack and that's going to be different anyway.
Yeah.
So design it from the start if you want to be the most successful and show up there, because then maybe you can map that over and make it make sense when you do go into a mass or a Milo store.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the mistakes that I've seen a lot of brands make is they just take their conventional grocery SKU and then they just make it a larger format and put it into Costco and wonder why it's not pulling as fast
Right.
or not showing up. And it's like it's a totally different environment. The Costco members are different, the shopping experience.
Yep.
So
Yep.
no, that's great. Now, one of the things about consumer behavior, you mentioned looking at trends, seeing the
Hmm.
consumer. Like, what are some trends that you're seeing now that a marketer should be aware of?
Hmm. So it feels like these things contradict each other, but you have very cost conscious shoppers right now. And what they're doing is they are analyzing every purchase they make, but in a different way than what you would have said of just in 2008, 2009, right? Oh, I'm just trying to reduce my grocery bill. Now shoppers are going to multiple stores to build their cart. So instead of just going to the grocery store or just going to a mass store to get everything, they're willing to make multiple trips and even use e-commerce to get what they're going to consider their weekly groceries because they're cost driven. So I think from a marketer's standpoint, you look at that and say, are you tight with sales to know when your biggest and best promotions are happening so that you leverage those in your communication to the customer? So that your shopper who typically buys your chocolate at Target knows they might be able to go to their local grocery store or to a mass store and get $1 off or have a coupon or something like that. So that's where some communication within the team is really critical. That's one side that still feels very contradictory to then the other side of the trend that I'm seeing, which is premiumization and upgraded purchasing in almost every category. This is specifically driven by our millennial and Z customers, right? These are the shoppers who are coming in and saying, if I'm going to buy a bag of pretzels, I don't want the standard, most conventional pretzel. I want it to be special. Maybe I
Mm.
want it to have a fun seasoning, or I like the bag design. So that opportunity to get the shopper to upgrade, if you will, trade up, is there. And it's a real opportunity that a lot of brands, I think, are starting to see, and that's what they're coming in at. But you got to be conscious of that other side, right? Because those same people who are reaching for the upgrade are also the people who are still going out and shopping at 12 different stores to make their cart for the week.
Yeah, it's true. Great points. I think, what about, because endangered species chocolate, natural confection, premium priced
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
the market. And
Hmm.
the last few years, you mentioned that the price pressure on consumers is high.
Yep.
How did you navigate that? And did you guys start to see softening of sales, consumers trading down? Like
Hmm.
what was that kind of experience like? Because I think others that have a premium product or have pricing, they're probably thinking, well, should we just go on discount more? Should we use couponing more? Should we, what do
Yeah.
we need to do to say reposition, short term while
Hmm.
consumers are feeling this crunch?
Yeah. So, what I would say first is get your shopper to buy your product because they love your product, not because it's on sale. Right now, a legacy brand that's been in the industry for a long time, like Endangered Species was, you every year, like, how do I get just a little extra squeeze, or how do I get a little more velocity? And that's where those extra little promotions might get added. And at some point, you look back and go, whoa, I need to be cognizant of my trade spend here. And so, if you have the luxury of coming in and saying, we're going to get our consumer to buy our product because they love it, not because they have it on sale, and then we're going to incentivize them to increase our velocities because they love it so much, they are going to pantry load when we do, let's say, a BOGO at Publix. Those are the strategies that I enthusiastically encourage marketers to follow as they're thinking about um, the price pressure of today's market, because that is what forms resilience. So when we
Mm,
really think about a brand, right, eventually the newness wears off, the incrementality of just gaining distribution wears off, and you have to look at reality. And that reality is, do I drive enough velocity to be a mainstay of the category? And the edge of that sword that drives the velocity and makes you a mainstay is the resonance that you have with your customer.
mhm.
You have a reason to exist for those shoppers, and you serve a job or a purpose. And so when it came to endangered species chocolate, that conservation mission paired with high quality, because it was a category must have in premiumization, is what gave us the ability to fare through a lot of storms. Let me tell you, before the cocoa market had its climb, we still faced different types of storms. We saw innovation around low sugar, right? And endangered
Mhm.
species was naturally a pretty low sugar chocolate bar because it's so high in cocoa content. But we still saw softening of sales because shoppers had a new way to consume less sugar in chocolate. Maybe they had seen this new product that's lower sugar matches their keto or their Weight Watchers diet or something, right? And so those things certainly cause inflections in your performance, but you have the strength to rebound because of the resilience you've built through that brand resonance. And that's really where, in the last 2 years, Endangered Species was able to weather through the cocoa market. And certainly, we had to do a lot of changes internally, especially with marketing strategy, to get through some of those ebbs and flows of the market. But we still had a core audience that was engaging with our product and coming in the store and buying it, even when they saw the price come up at the shelf, because they had formed a connection and a reason to continue consuming it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think and just in your opinion, how important, like if you had to say quality,
Mm.
flavor options to the
Yeah.
conservation angle, what percent of the success of endangered species would you contribute to, one of those? Is it if we didn't have conservation, we just went on quality, like it would have died, like, or is it
Mm,
like how important is that kind of give back portion to the brand in your
mhm.
opinion?
Yeah. So whether the categories chocolate, potato chips, because I started my career at Frito-Lay, so we can use that as an example. Chocolate, potato chips, pickles. I think, fermented foods is a very interesting category right now that we're starting to see some different dynamics come in, even innovation around packaging. If we look at those kind of categories, the first 75 to 80% of decision making is based on taste. And then chocolate, if we boil that down to my own experience with endangered species, it's I'm in the mood for caramel today. I'm in the mood for raspberry today. I'm in the mood for almonds today, right? And so that first 75 to 80% is the table stakes. And there's a lot of really great tasting brands
Hmm.
out there, whether it be in right? Same thing when you go into chips or same thing when you go into pickles or trail mix or anything. And so I look at that as the table stakes. It goes back to the longevity. You've got to deliver on the taste and quality being good if you want to stick around. But then the other portion, 20 to 25%, is the nuances of your brand. That is the conservation mission and message that Endangered Species Chocolate has. It's the packaging design and the creative that stands out on the shelf, right? Consumers don't spend a lot of time standing in the aisle. They're making decisions pretty quickly, and part of that is based off what they see on the label. So,
Hmm.
um, as we look at that, those percentages are just me naming those percentages. I don't have specifically research that says 75%.
No.
But, every time that we would do a panel on purchase decision process, the decision tree, taste and flavor and quality of ingredients were always at the top.
Yeah.
So it tells you, that's what a consumer is banking on when they engage with the brand.
Right. So you're coming in, you have to win on what the consumers expect in the category. And then when
Hmm.
they're in that category in the decision making, then it becomes all the nuances and components that are designed for
Hmm.
them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I mean, think of it this way. Let's say someone says, I don't like dark chocolate. Well, why don't they like dark chocolate? Because they had a dark chocolate that was probably bitter, right?
Mhm.
And so their new notion is they don't like dark chocolate. Well, it's because of that one time they had that one brand that just didn't taste right to them. And so it, I think logically, right, we can all look at it and say, yeah, if I have a bad experience, the probability I'm going to come back and try it again is low.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Especially like say dark chocolate versus milk chocolate. It's but even though they're different, well then so here's a good segue into promotion to educate consumers because let's say
Mm.
you have to start building a relationship and a connection. They have to know about you. They
Yeah.
have to look at you. What has been a campaign or even just some really good principles that we could learn from that
Hmm.
say, you know what, this one really worked because of this from a promotional
Hmm.
standpoint.
Hmm. So, with a lot of products and really across a lot of retailers, getting a consumer to try your product, if you have confidence that it tastes good, is the most successful way to make your way into the consumer's basket. And there were several years that endangered species chocolate would accompany a launch, let's say at like a Whole Foods market. When we launched oat milk bars with Whole Foods back in early 2020, which we, of course, had to work around COVID shutdowns and sampling all these things. Once we could sample product, that was a great way to get a consumer to try something that was just a little different, right? Like, oh, how's this going to taste to have oat milk in my chocolate? And so doing those demos when we would launch a product, and that was one example, we did it with a lot of other products, was a great way to gain a customer base in a regional basis, right? I think it's really daunting if you're a smaller or mid-sized brand to think, my word, I need to do merchandising and demoing at every retailer and every store we go into when we get our product on the shelf.
Yeah.
You can look at that. That's another reason why when you're entering, especially mass or club, you might approach it from a more regional model because it's achievable. And once you've been very successful in that regional basis, you can build upon it, building blocks, and you're taking bites and being able to chew it and learn from it and then taking another bite rather than just trying to eat the whole sandwich.
Right. Yeah, very cool. Any campaigns that you ran that was awesome that you feel like, oh, this one was great and it worked really well? Like,
Yeah, so we started up for the first time ads on Facebook and Instagram in 2020. We had not been advertising in social media until that time. I know that like your eyebrows pop up because that
right?
just seems shocking. But you know, we there hadn't been I think a lot of smaller brands understand this, right? You don't have a lucrative marketing budget in earlier days of building your brand. And so you have to be really strategic. And a lot of times that means starting in the store because that's where the purchase is made. And so
Yep.
until 2020, right, we couldn't make the case for it. But we got to 2020, we opened up our storefront and got into Amazon, right? And we said, okay, now's the time we can start to promote online and also just grow awareness of our brand. And that was our measure. We said, we're going to look at brand awareness and household penetration, and we're going to measure it from January 2020 or maybe February 2020, and then we're going to measure it again at the end of the year, maybe at 12-month mark. And so that was a time where we were leaning hard into the ingredients that were in these products. And we did some awesome photo shoots. We had some really cool high definition videos, all of these things that were a first for endangered species. And it breathed this new life into a brand that people had already known and known really well for great natural chocolate. And now it had this edge, this cool factor. So you know, we saw huge jumps in our following. I think doubled Instagram followers within like a 12-month period just from putting that energy in it. We saw a lot of engagement on the different ads that we were running, and we did a lot of A/B testing on who the right consumer groups were, and is it better to geo traffic or geo target? What are the ways that we're going to be able to engage with the audiences? But I think that when I look back at different campaigns that we've run, it certainly was the most fun because all of it was fresh and new. But it also was the most successful because it took the perception and awareness of ESC up to the next level.
Yeah, and man, what great timing! Like launching in January of say 2020 of an online when
Yeah.
you have the honeymoon of
Hmm.
e-commerce because of COVID
Right.
happening. But
Right. Right.
yeah, that's great. No, I love that. So on the flip side, though, every marketer a has a campaign or a project that doesn't go
Hmm.
really well.
Hmm.
Have you've been doing this now for a long time?
Yeah.
What's an example that didn't go well, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So we got really excited about a patented process that we designed to be executed in-house on our production lines because the production facility for endangered species is really great at making tablets, but it's really great at making tablets, right? And so the constraints of being able to diversify the portfolio were real. But we created this dual shot process where we were filling one chocolate bar with two flavors side by side, right? And so the technology was really cool. It was patented, and the flavor combinations were great. Caramel and peanut butter, cinnamon caramel and coffee caramel. You know, there were just some really great combinations. I think there were three total. But this was also a time where we were looking at different sizes. So we scaled it down. And, you know, if you look at a 3 ounce bar that has a really big face on the shelf, we cut it in half. And then we also were testing new names like duos. And we did some consumer testing, and duos was the name that the consumer ultimately picked. So we were really confident. We had done consumer testing of even the packaging design, and it just didn't land when it got to the
Hmm.
shelf. And the reason was it was too complicated for the shopper to understand, right? It was too much going on. Okay, wait a second. It's endangered species chocolate, but it's also called duos. It's why is it is it two flavors in one? Is it two flavors side by side? Right? There was, and then we even were doing, I think at that time, recyclable so there was a lot of messaging, and we just did not land it. So while the product was cool and people you taste it and be like, this is delicious, the execution thereof was just it didn't hit. And so looking back at that, right, I can look and say that was also in a period of time where endangered species was evolving a little bit of its identity and its mission, vision, values, not departing from what it was, but trying to figure out how to move along with the customer because The dot theory, if you're familiar with it, is very real, right? When you're in your peak and prime, you have a core audience, and let's say that audience was age 28 to 42 for endangered species chocolate. Well, if you continue to cater to them, you also age with them. And what
Mm.
eventually happens if you age with them, you die with them, right? And so if your audience target that you always want to capture is 28 to 42, you have to understand what the new 28-year-olds are looking at, what they want, what they desire, what they like the most, or what needs they need fulfilled. And that changes with every generation in time. And so in that season when duos came out, endangered species was also trying to figure that out. Like, how do we we know conservation is relevant. We know the commitment to giving forward is relevant. No one looks at you and says, well, that's a bad idea. Please
Yeah.
don't help the environment. But how do you make it cool for the new shopper that's coming in the category? And so there were a lot of things going on, but I think at the end of the day, too many messages. The product was too complicated.
You know what? I think I love that story because I think we don't talk enough about those issues, and I think anytime we introduce new variables, smaller format size, new
Yeah.
components,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting because you're going through it, and the testing was good, right? The process was great.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, "Oh, should be working," and then it just doesn't totally fly. And I think as marketers, sometimes we either overthink it, maybe, or it's an interesting one because every metric said it should have worked well. And man, what was it like internally then to say, you know what, let's move on past this?
Yeah.
What was that decision
Yeah.
process?
Uh, this is where for any marketer, it's really important to stay engaged with what the growth plan is for their organization. And in that season, Endangered Species Chocolate's goal was a big, hairy, audacious goal of giving conservation $1 million annually. That's where we were, that was the charge. Well, to do that, you have to have enough profit to give $1 million annually, right? So if you boil it down, what does that mean? And if you're sitting on product in a warehouse because it's not moving at the shelf, or if your retailer is coming to you and saying, hey, we need to discount this to get some velocity moving, or we need to discount it because I'm going to get it off my shelf, that's not helping your bottom line. That's not helping your profit. And so the decision comes really easy when you have a clear view of where you're headed. Now, fast forward into 2022, endangered species started a process. The leadership team looked and said, what we need to recalibrate and rally around mission, vision, values so that we can have an awesome 3-year growth strategy. And there were things we needed to do. We knew at that time the labels weren't 100% there, but we couldn't fix them. We were for 2 years we had just been grinding on like what are the changes we need to make to really make our label communicate the hierarchy that we know we need to communicate, but also speak to who we are as an organization. Once we got those things in place, the mission, vision, values locked. And again, it wasn't a complete pivot away, it was a transition to relevance of what our customer wants from us and what we stand for internally. And then we set that growth plan. Those were the things that unlocked it. Those were the things that said, okay, got it. We're going to put these ingredient icons at the bottom of our flavor box. We're going to shrink the flavor box. We're going to do this with our logo. We're going to put a color band so we have a brand block identifier when we look at the shelf. All those things suddenly happened and it unlocked what we needed to do. So it works both ways of like, you need to make a decision on the product. Is it going to make it? Is it not? Oh, it's your baby. You don't want to let go of it. But if it's not hitting the goals of the business that you're of where you're headed, you have to do it. Or on the other way, if you're having a hard time making decisions, pivot and go, do we have a strategy? Do we know where we're all headed? Are we passionate about, are we bought in on that path? And so even fast forward in 2024, Endangered Species Chocolate launched 17 new SKUs. It was a wild time in
Wow,
life, and it was
17 SKUs is a
incredible.
lot.
17 SKUs, right? A lot of seasonal items. So there was like kind of a copy and paste effect that we had there, but 17 SKUs, really disruptive, kind of crazy ones that were out there, like a Dip and Joy. And then just, hey, here's some shapes of animals for each season. So a wide span, but we were going in the bag category, we're going to snacking category, we still had baking chips, and then we even had some truffles. And so as we look at that, as we saw the influence of the cocoa market and we knew where we were headed, we were able to say, you know what? We're going to double down on the shapes that we're doing this really well. And we're going to walk away from the dip and joy that we just cannot, not because it's not necessarily a cool idea and people like it, but right now, it's not going to help us get where we are headed in the next 3 years. And so, having that experience a couple times, seeing it both ways, right?
Mm.
Because we've had some really successful launches and then we've had others that just don't align. I can confidently come back and say it's because we made good decisions when we knew exactly where we were headed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really that's a really good point of just making sure that there's alignment, mission, vision, values of where the company's going to go, and then what you're
Right.
saying, marketers being close to that and really
Being very
understanding, I think is
close.
key.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, what do you think? What do you think some good traits of a marketer today should be? If as marketers, like if you're saying, you know what, learn these skill sets, what would
Hmm.
say a couple of them be in your opinion?
Yeah. As a marketer, you are the heart of your brand, right? You're the soul of your brand, and you have to keep the integrity of it. So, um, resilience against influences that might make you waver and go, oh, maybe we can do that, or it's okay. We don't have to keep that font or color, whatever it might be, right? It can be creative, but it also can be product driven. Having that confidence that you are the heart and soul of the keeper of the heart and soul of the brand and being able to stand up for that piece is really number one. Because in business, there are going to be business challenges that go against everything a marketer wants to do, right?
Hmm.
It's just so, so true. And so having the ability to stand up for it and know what you're for is number one trait. Number two is not being afraid to fail, right? Um, and but try to fail on a small scale, right? So what I mean by that is if you have something new you want to try for the brand, pitch the case for it and say, I need $20,000 to run this targeted on-site ad. I expect a 3x ROAS. And if it does this, my plan would be this. If it does this, my plan would be this, right? So success path or learn, fail fast, and pivot. So being able to take those risks in small bites and learn from them one way or the other would be the second thing. And then third is to understand the holistic viewpoint of being in CPG. Because in a service industry, you're selling and marketing usually something that people are doing for you. So it's a lot about the team cultivation and it's about the people, and that's very intuitive. I think in CPG we get really honed in on the product because that is what the consumer engages with. But as a marketer, you should be focused on the people that touch that product. Supply chain, operations, warehouse, sales, finance, your broker system, your retailer system. You should be obsessed with understanding all the people who touch your product and your brand because if they are bought in to your brand identity and the value proposition of your product and what you stand for, the rest will follow,
Yeah.
right? Because they're going to ensure that that is carried through every step of the way.
Yeah, totally. No, I love that. So in terms of then brands, who do you think's killing
Mm.
it right now? Which brand out there do you think is doing a great job and you're like, ah, I love what they're doing?
Yeah. So many. I want to like give a couple like categorical examples, right? So from a conventional kind of wow, I can't believe they did that perspective. Um, what you're seeing with nerds clusters right now is an amazing phenomenon, right?
Hmm.
I mean, Greg Udati, the CMO over there, has done an incredible job with that team, and the product developer actually. He told a story at an awards ceremony back in May at the NCA. He came up with that product because when he was a kid, he would be on the ball diamond and like Big League chewing gum,
Oh yeah.
it lost its flavor instantaneously. And so he would take Big League chewing gum, pop it in his mouth, and then take a box of nerds and toss it in with it to keep the flavor going. And that is how he came up with, of course, there was some technical things like, oh, hey, we have this equipment, this technology that we can build upon, right? But I mean, you take something like nerds, very nostalgic candy that had kind of bumbled along here in the last, let's say, decade, right? It wasn't the first thing you were grabbing out of the Halloween bucket.
Yeah.
Now, nerd clusters, it is the,
Oh,
like my kids say, it is the candy of Halloween
oh,
2025,
100%.
right?
Totally.
So, and they've kind of characterized the nerds themselves, like they're how cute are they, right? So,
Yeah.
love what they're doing there, and they're taking that across the portfolio, right? They've got some really fun things they did with Lemon Head on like a rainy day, we're bringing sunshine and so forth. So, from a conventional mass perspective, revitalizing something, I think they're just nailing it. On cool and trending, I am just loving what Joyburst is doing.
Mm.
You've got this benefit hydration space that is kind of noisy with powders, and you've got everything from liquid IV to element and so forth. And then Joyburst comes out and you've got really hidden benefits in hydration, right?
Yeah.
Like honestly, the first time I saw the box and saw it in Costco, I wasn't 100% sure what it was. But I tried it because they were sampling it, and I was like, oh, mental clarity, alertness, hydration. These are all things I want. I love the Tetra Pak box, all these things. And I just think they're building with intention
Yeah.
around what their core offering is. So that's what I'm watching. I love what they're doing. I think they're nailing it. And then on the really, like, I would say, like, smaller scale, I mentioned there's a lot going on in the fermented and kind of pickles category. And so watching these brands who are trying to bring a different format, like stand-up pouches or resealable pouches, into an aisle that has historically always been filled with jars.
Right.
And that's going to be a barrier at first, but I remember that happening in candy. So way if we rewind, Bark Thins came on the set
Oh, yeah.
and
I remember that.
created. Okay, there were no bags. Like you didn't see stand-up pouches, resealable pouches in the candy aisle.
Yeah.
You would see the fold down gusseted bags over, but not this style. And so Bark Thins comes in with it, carved out an entirely new subcategory of confections, right? And everyone chased, how are we going to get into the stand-up pouch space? And so I think that could happen again,
Mhm.
potentially, as we look at what's going on in fermented foods. So brands like maybe a Freestyle, they were in olives, they just launched in pickles. I think we're going to see some more insurgence of that in the fermented aisle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that we overlook format changes in innovation, but
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
there's like Graza olive oil, right, which was basically
Yes.
just squeeze bottle format of olive oil. It was just a
Hmm.
format innovation with
Hmm.
great branding behind it and usage occasions
Yep.
and things like this. But what you're saying even with Bark Thins, it's like a format change of how you actually
Hmm.
view it. So
Yeah, and Graza's another one. I mean, I can remember picking up Graza at like a gourmet food store,
yeah,
right? And thinking, ooh, I bought my little gourmet, and I loved the squeeze bottle. Now I have become a loyalist. That is the olive oil that I buy. And I think that's a great example of a brand that did it right, right? They captured an audience that kind of became a cult following, and then they pushed into the masses at retail. And they had the momentum to do it. Same thing that I'm seeing with Truff, truffle infused sauces and hot sauces and so forth. Another one where my discovery path was probably through like my local hardware store that carries gourmet foods and
yeah,
things. And now you're starting to, they had like a gift box at Costco last year. And I think they're going to continue to expand into some of the retailers. So you could go on and on, right? Nature Nate's is another one that it's like, wow,
yeah.
you're the number one brand in honey. Who knew there could be a number one national brand in honey? Because when you think honey, it's like, oh, I went into my farmer's market and grabbed my little teddy bear of honey, and they've just not done that. Their orange is iconic.
Yeah.
Becca May's done a phenomenal job. Just a good friend of mine too. Yeah, so many examples. We could probably talk
Oh
all
yeah.
day about the great examples of brands that are getting it right out there.
All right. So one question then on brands. If I looked into your pantry, what are some that I would find?
All of the ones I just mentioned.
Good. All right.
From a beverage perspective, I would also add real tea. Really interesting path there, and I think
We just
they're
bought a
being
case the other day.
okay. So
Yeah.
I think they're being a little quiet about their growth, but that's one that I think we're going to start to see as like a household staple a lot. And I I really love it. Um, all the brands we mentioned, as I look in my pantry and I'm trying to have like a snack or a sweet treat or something like that, I've been a little bit into some of the popcorn and pretzels that are adding protein or unique flavors like dill pickle and
Yeah, yeah.
some of them. So that might evolve over time, but kindlings is one that is, I mean, the leaders obviously came over from Kodiak. They have a proven model. They know what they're doing. I think that's going to be an incredible product, but they have specifically a dill pickle pretzel that's doing really well. And really in the pretzel space, again, sleepy category. Now they're bringing a lot of new stuff.
Totally. No, that's really fun. I like that. What if you had to give a piece of advice for a marketer who's coming into who's coming to our industry and they want to be successful, they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to progress. What's some advice that you would give them?
Mhm. Jump into the other disciplines that you're going to be working with day to day. Understand what matters most to those audiences because you are, as a marketer, relying on their buy-in to what you put in front of them, right? And so
Mhm.
building trust with your salespeople, building trust with your finance team, building trust with your product team. And it may be one person, right, in a small organization, or it might be agencies that you're working with. You've got to jump in and build trust just through communication and just through transparent conversations. I think Jay and Jeff from Revelate Advisory introduced you and I at one point, Braden. And one of the things that they instilled in me as we think about some of the mentors that I've been really blessed with over the time, one of the things they instilled in me is if you think about relationships on kind of a X and Y axis, and across one axis is likability, and on your vertical is ability to be transparent.
Mhm.
Most of the time, we place people who we like a lot low on the ability to be transparent with. And then people who are we are super transparent with, they tend to be ones that we have low likability on. And
Hmm.
so we should look to get into gold star relationships with all of those key stakeholders so we can be super transparent, but we also really like that person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we scare away from saying, like, I like the people I work with, or, because we want to be like, oh, I don't have to like everybody. No, if you like the people you work with, it is way easier to do the work. It's That's just real,
Yeah.
right? But I think we say, oh, we don't have to like everybody because then it gives us the excuse on the transparency scale. So as a marketer, I can give a really specific example. When we started working with agencies and we were putting out project briefs and they would bring back, draft one of something, a video, let's say, we would have a conversation. Hey, like, oh, you're sitting outside in your hammock, or how are your cats, or whatever. And yeah, I'm headed to go to the kids' game this weekend. But then we could easily pivot and be like, listen, this is missing the mark. I
Yeah.
really need X, Y, and Z that were delivered in the brief. Do you see the gap here? And how can we put that together? It doesn't have to be rude, right? But you got to be transparent because that's where you're going to unlock the most success. And so from a marketer standpoint, that's for agencies, that's for your sales team, that's for everybody that is an audience you're engaging with.
Yeah. No, it's great. No, it's good advice. I think cross-functional relationships is so important. I think we underestimate that as marketers. But if
Yeah.
you want to execute, if you want to get things done, you have to be able to build those relationships. So, no, that's
Hmm.
fantastic. And last question:
Yeah.
who's had an impact in your life, and what
Hmm.
did you kind of learn from them?
Yeah. Certainly my own family, right? My parents, aunts, uncles, grandma, my husband, my kids. It was a big inflection point for me to become a mother and a CPG leader.
Hmm.
And I realized in that journey, it made me better. Right. It made me better at setting boundaries, which is something that we all struggle with a little bit, both ways. Like, this is my focus time. I have to get this done. And I'm not going to let any distractions happen. But also, I'm going to step away because I'm a mom. And tomorrow I'm going to come back with a lot of different clarity than maybe what I had had before. But also because you are motivated to do well for your legacy. So that's had a huge influence. I've had so many amazing professional influences and mentors. One of the biggest, greatest steps that I have had lately has been when I joined the NCA's board of trustees because I got to sit at the table with just some really influential, successful executives
Mm.
in a giant category. And seeing how they lead, how they engage, how they collaborate was just an awesome learning experience for me. But then, I mentioned Jay and Jeff. They were huge mentors to me in understanding the impact that strategy has on your organization. I've had marketers like Ann Outerslice and Rachel Gruber, ex P&G women who went out and have made carved their own paths for themselves in the CPG world. So I could keep going,
That's great.
but it's just been, I'm always learning from others and even my own teammates, right? It's awesome to see the success of people who I've been fortunate and blessed to work with, and now see them going out and doing just incredible things in the CPG world.
Yeah, totally. Well, Whitney, it's always great to be able to catch up with you and
Yeah.
just to hear just your wisdom. I think it's awesome. Really appreciate it, and yeah, thanks for being a part of Brand Builders.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Talk soon.